Hello, I'm Daniela, and welcome to today's video. I'm going to show my technique for wrapping plastic candy canes to elevate them, and I'll use either fabric or trim, ribbon or lace. It's a fun technique. I'm sure you've seen this before. It's kind of a primitive looking Christmas craft, but I find it so useful at Christmas time. It's a great little topper for a gift. You can make a bunch of them and hang them on your tree or in your garland. I love to add them to my fabric books, and that's what started me wrapping these ornaments. So let me show you my technique and some variations, wrapping them with really fun trims and ribbons that you can find this time of year. So here are two examples of wrapped candy canes. This is just with this little twine, and it gives a really rustic look. It really elevates the plastic candy cane, makes it a little bit larger, and depending on the fabric you use, you get a really luxurious result. This is twine. This is fabric that I just pulled into strips. So I have a little raggedy edge here, which I like, and you get a different effect depending on the fabric that you use. Now let me show you some examples of other ribbon and twine that I've wrapped and the results. It's really quite striking. So using this twine, this is just natural. I get a beautiful result. This one has a little metallic in it, so I also get another beautiful result, completely different in appearance. And then this green has a little bit of red metallic woven in. So these are your standard Christmas colors, and these are the results. But you don't have to use just twine. Let me show you some examples of other items as well. So this is just a plain red grosgrain ribbon, and that's how that looks when it's wrapped. Here's some very thin twine, almost like baker's twine with a little metallic edge. Here's this beautiful ribbon with a little ruffle on either edge. Oh, I love that. I think it's so elegant looking. And then wrapping it with velvet ribbon, very decadent. I wrapped the candy canes with different decorative twine, so I got a very nice result. I love the neutrals. And then here I used a little lace. I wrapped the candy cane, and I made a little bow on the top. It's quite beautiful. So let's wrap one with fabric and one with a ribbon. I'll show you my techniques and some little pitfalls to avoid. So I have some 3/8 ribbon here. You can use any type of ribbon. You can play around with the widths. I tend to like to use flat ribbon, although sometimes, like with that ruffled edge, it produces a very nice result. It really depends on the ribbon itself or the lace. And then for the fabric, I just have some plaid fabric here, which I'll tear into strips. These are the candy canes. They're these plastic candy canes that you can get a lot of places at Christmas time. You can even get them online. You can get them at the dollar store. You can get them at the craft store. And they're lovely on a tree as they are, but I like to elevate them further by covering them with either fabric or ribbon or lace. So just keep in mind that the candy canes come in different widths. This one's just a slightly wider candy cane than this one. And it's not that big a deal, but you'll just have to add a little more fabric or a little more trim to get around the pieces. You'll just have to adjust it accordingly. So let's start with our ribbon first. Now to attach the ribbon to the candy cane, I use hot glue, but I've also had a lot of luck with tacky glue. Just have to be a little more patient with the tacky glue because the hot glue dries quicker, so it's a little easier to work with that way. First thing I like to do in working with ribbon is I'll cut a small little length off my piece, and I like to cover the ends first. So this is maybe 2 or 3 inches long. It doesn't even have to be that long. And then I cut that in half, so it's maybe just a little bit more than 1 inch long. I take a little hot glue, just put a little bead of it at the end, a little bit on the sides, and then I just take that ribbon and I smush it down, covering that end. And my goal is just to cover that end. I also like to hold it down on the sides. If it comes up like that, I'll add just a touch more glue and hold it down. And I'll do that on both sides. So you're trying to get this ribbon as flat as possible, but to cover the end of your candy cane. Now sometimes these candy canes have little spots that are uneven on the end. So just do your best to cover that with ribbon. And then I'll do the same thing on the other end of the candy cane, the part with a little hook. Now this candy cane is just under 15 centimeters from here to here, a little under 6 inches. So I like to take at least 3 or 4 times the height of that candy cane to wrap it. Sometimes it'll give me a little bit more than I need of the ribbon, but I like having that little extra. That way I don't have to join another piece. If you do have to join another piece because you ran out of ribbon, it's not that big a deal. It's just a little easier and quicker to do it with one piece of ribbon. So I like to start at the hook because I find getting around this curve to be the hardest part of this technique. So I take my ribbon and I want to put it on the side here. I'll add a little dollop of glue right on top of the ribbon I already put down. And then I attach just a little bit at the end. I want to get that good and attached before I start wrapping my candy cane. Now I like to remove a lot of the hot glue strings as I go, but you can wait and do that at the end as well. So before I add a little more glue, I'm going to feed my ribbon through the candy cane here. Keep it out of the way and just add a little bit of glue so that I can wrap it around. And I'm trying to wrap it at a slight angle, and I'm trying to keep my ribbon flat. Now I don't have to add glue constantly. I like to do it maybe every 2 or 3 wraps, particularly on this curve. And I want to just continue this to make sure that my candy cane is wrapping nicely. So once I have that wrapping, I'll add just a little dollop of glue, holding it in place. Now I tend to wrap it tighter, closer together around that curve. Again, just continue adding glue and wrapping, getting over that curve. Then once I get kind of towards the end of that curve, I'll start making a little more space. So I pull my ribbon, and it doesn't have to be quite as tight, meaning there doesn't have to be quite that overlap. I still try and keep my ribbon nice and flat. And now that I'm on the straightaway, well, it's much easier going. Put a little glue. And again, try and keep my ribbon flat. If it doesn't lay flat, I go back. If the glue dries, then I'll just add a little more glue. And that's the beauty of working with hot glue. You can pull it apart and just redo it. So now that I'm on the straightaway, I can go a little bit quicker. Almost at the end. And then when I get to the end, when I only have a couple of inches left, I'll add a little more glue than I normally would. I'll glue it a little more securely to hold everything in place. And when I get to close to the end, I make sure I glue it constantly. I want the ribbon to wrap around and just to cover that end as nicely as I can get it. Once I'm happy I've covered all the parts I want, I'll hold it in place, let the glue cool off so that it's nice and secure, and then just trim this. So now I have a little tail sticking up. I'll add a little dollop of hot glue to the tail, press it over, and now I have my candy cane wrapped quite nicely. So that's a very interesting effect, going from one of these to this. Now let me show you how I do it with fabric. So you can use any fabric you like. I like to use a cotton fabric, or mostly a cotton blend. And this length, I'm going to have to cut it into a number of strips. So all I do is I find one end, I decide the width I want the strips, maybe a little close to 1/2 inch. So I'll make a few cuts, and then I just pull it apart. Now the fabric doesn't have to be perfectly sized. Your goal is to get it to be the same width, but if it's not the end of the world. I'll just pull the fabric here, remove any frayed edges that really stand out. There'll be more frayed edges that come along as we create the piece. And I'll just snip off the frayed edges at the end. So to wrap it with fabric, I do it a little bit differently. You can use that same procedure where you cut a little piece of the fabric and tack it down on either end. I only like to do that at the top end here. So I take a little piece of fabric, cut it, and just glue it to the top. Press it down. And then I really press it down going around the edge. After that glue has cooled, I'll come up and add just a little dollop of glue and press it again. So now for this technique, I'm going to start wrapping at the bottom. I like to start wrapping at the bottom because I take my fabric and I come over just like this. So I'll put a little dollop of hot glue. Put my fabric in place, hold it over, and just wait for that glue to cool and settle. So now this is what I have. Move my fabric to the side. I have some fabric attached, but a little sticking out. So I'll just come in here and put just the smallest amount of glue down and press that tail, that first piece that I put in place. This one's still a little mobile. So now I'm going to take this and start wrapping. I put it at an angle. I make sure that I have all of my plastic covered. Add a little glue and just start pulling and wrapping, just like this. Now this goes a lot faster because this ribbon is a lot wider than the trim I used on the previous candy cane. Again, I'm trying to make sure my fabric doesn't fold up or crease. Still wrapping. Add a little more glue. And now I realize I'm not going to get to the end with this fabric. So after I have it securely here, I'm just going to cut it and take another piece, another strip of that fabric. Again, I'm going to use some hot glue just to set down the very edge of it. And now I'll just take another strip. I'll try and match that angle, put my glue down, and just finish wrapping. Now once again, because I'm on the curve of the candy cane, I'll wrap just a little bit tighter. Continue to play around, adding a little glue, wrapping it. And now on the curve, the fabric starts to give. I just want to continue that. That's exactly what I want it to do. Since I'm going to be wrapping it on the right side, I want to make sure this side is secure. And I'll use the weight from the fabric to wrap it around and to hold down that area that's up a little bit. And now I'm getting right to the edge, trim my fabric. I like to leave a little extra here, even though I know I'm not going to need all of it to wrap around. Wrap around my final piece that covers all of the fabric, so there's no plastic showing. And now I can just decide how much I need to really finish off that candy cane. So I'll just snip that there. I'll add a little hot glue right to the fabric itself and just twist it around. And there I have a fabric wrapped candy cane. I think it's adorable. You can now take your extra fabric if you want, wrap a little bow, if that's something you like, or you can just hang your candy cane on the tree or add it to your fabric book. So you can play around making the bow. maybe even take an extra piece of fabric just to wrap that center of the bow. So I have a little rustic bow for my candy cane. I'll trim the tails, and it gives new life to those plastic candy canes. So you can go from this to any of these, just using fabric and ribbon or trim that you have. So that's how I wrap plastic candy canes. It's a fun technique that changes the plastic candy cane into something a little more, well, homey. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And please consider becoming a paid member of my channel. I give behind the scenes footage and additional techniques. Thanks for joining me today.